My name is Grace, and I am 31 years old. I was standing in front of my penthouse door with two suitcases, exhausted from a month-long business trip in Japan. The lock had been changed. Before I could process what was happening, my mother's voice came from behind me. "Don't act so surprised. We already sold this apartment." My heart dropped. I had paid over $600,000 for this place. How could they sell it? Before we dive into my story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see how my family's betrayal turned into their biggest regret. To understand how I ended up homeless because of my own parents, you need to know about my family and where I stood in it. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, in what seemed like an ordinary middle-class family. My father, Donald, was an accountant. My mother, Pamela, was a homemaker. And then there was my younger sister, Brianna, who came into this world 4 years after me. The difference in how we were raised could not have been more stark. When I was born, my parents were still struggling financially. My father had just started his career, and money was tight. By the time Brianna arrived, things had improved significantly. My father had gotten promotions, and they had moved into a bigger house. But somehow the abundance that came with Brianna's birth translated into her receiving everything, while I continued to receive very little. I remember wanting to learn piano when I was 8 years old. I begged my parents for lessons. They said they could not afford it. 2 years later, when Brianna casually mentioned she might like to play piano, they bought a $3,000 keyboard and enrolled her in private lessons. She quit after 3 months because she found it boring. The keyboard collected dust in the corner of the living room for years. When I was 16, I worked part-time at a grocery store for 6 months to save up for a used bicycle so I could get to school and my job. I was so proud of that bicycle. When Brianna turned 16, my parents surprised her with a brand new car. Not a used car, a brand new Honda Civic with a bow on top. The message was clear from the beginning. Brianna was the princess. I was just there. My mother always had an excuse. "Brianna is more sensitive than you, Grace. She needs more support. You are the strong one. You can handle things on your own." I heard that phrase so many times it became etched into my brain. You are the strong one. Translation: you do not deserve the same care and attention as your sister. Despite all of this, I worked hard. I studied relentlessly. I got a full scholarship to Stanford University for computer science. It was the proudest moment of my life when I received that acceptance letter. I thought finally my parents would see my worth. They did not come to my graduation. It fell on the same weekend as one of Brianna's dance recitals. She was not even the lead dancer. She was in the back row of a community performance. But my parents chose to attend her event instead of watching their firstborn receive her degree from one of the most prestigious universities in the country. I graduated with honors. I walked across that stage alone with no family in the audience. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself I would prove my worth through my success. And I did. After graduation, I was recruited by a top tech company in Silicon Valley. Within 5 years, I had risen to the position of senior software engineer, earning over $200,000 annually. I lived frugally, renting a small studio apartment, even though I could afford more. I did not go on vacations. I did not buy designer clothes. Every extra dollar went into my savings account. My goal was simple. I wanted to buy my dream home, a penthouse in San Francisco with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. I had seen one during an open house when I was a broke college student, and I had promised myself that one day I would own something just like it. Meanwhile, Brianna's life took a very different path. She enrolled in college but dropped out after 2 years because she found it too hard. She jumped from job to job, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months because she always had a problem with her boss, her coworkers, or the work itself. My parents never held her accountable. Instead, they made excuses. "She is still finding herself," they would say. "She is young. She has time." Brianna developed expensive taste, designer handbags, luxury clothing, first-class trips to Europe with friends. She dated wealthy men who funded her lifestyle. And when those relationships inevitably ended, she would come crying to my parents for money. And my parents always gave it to her, even when they did not have it to give. My mother called me regularly during those years. Not to ask how I was doing, not to congratulate me on my promotions, but to ask for money for Brianna. Your sister needs help with rent. Brianna's car broke down. She needs money for a medical bill. Over the course of 5 years, I gave my parents over $50,000. It was supposed to be loans, but I never saw a single penny returned. Every time I gently reminded my mother about paying me back, she would get defensive. Why are you being so calculating with family? Grace, Brianna is struggling. You have a good job. Can you not be generous? Generous. As if I had not worked 16-hour days to earn that money. As if it had just fallen into my lap. Eventually, I stopped giving. I told my parents that I needed to focus on my own financial goals, that I could not keep funding Brianna's irresponsible lifestyle. They did not take it well. You have changed, my mother said coldly during our last conversation about money. Success has made you selfish. I hung up the phone that day feeling a mix of guilt and determination. I pushed their words out of my mind and focused on my goal. The penthouse was within reach. I just needed to stay the course. I had no idea that my decision to stop giving money would eventually cost me everything I had worked for. After 8 years of saving, I finally had enough. $350,000. Enough for a significant down payment on a penthouse priced at $1,200,000. The rest I would finance through a mortgage. It was the most exciting moment of my life when I found the perfect unit in Pacific Heights. Top floor, 2 bedrooms, a wraparound balcony with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge that took my breath away every time I looked at it. I was 28 years old, and I was about to become a homeowner. But there was a problem. When I went to the bank to finalize my mortgage application, they denied me. My credit score was too low. I was confused. I had never missed a payment in my life. I had no debt. How could my credit score be in the gutter? I requested a copy of my credit report, and what I found made me sick to my stomach. There were multiple credit cards opened in my name, cards I had never applied for, cards with balances totaling over $60,000, all of them maxed out and delinquent. I immediately called my mother. Mom, there are credit cards in my name that I never opened. Do you know anything about this? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then my mother's voice, small and guilty. I can explain, Grace. Brianna needed help and her credit was already ruined. I used your information to open cards for her. She promised she would pay them off. I did not think she would just stop paying. My hands were shaking. Mom, this is identity theft. This is a federal crime. You could go to prison. Brianna could go to prison. My mother started crying. Please, Grace, do not report this. You cannot send your own mother and sister to jail. We are family. You are supposed to protect us. My father called a few hours later, his tone stern. Grace, your mother told me what happened. I know we made a mistake, but you need to be the bigger person here. Do not destroy this family over money. Do not destroy this family over money. As if they had not just destroyed my credit and my reputation and my ability to buy my dream home. I wanted to go to the police. Every logical bone in my body told me to file a report and let them face the consequences of their actions. But I could not bring myself to do it. Despite everything, the thought of my mother in handcuffs made me physically ill. So instead of seeking justice, I paid off the debt. $60,000. Gone. Just like that. I was left with $290,000. My credit was still damaged, and even though I had paid off the fraudulent accounts, it would take time to recover. The mortgage was no longer an option. My mother, perhaps sensing my devastation, or perhaps just trying to solve the problem she had created, offered a solution. Why don't I put my name on the deed? She suggested. My credit is perfect. I have no debt. I can get approved for the mortgage. You pay for everything, and when your credit improves, we can transfer the title to you. I should have said no. Every instinct told me this was a terrible idea, but I was so close to my dream. The penthouse was right there within reach, and despite everything, I wanted to believe that my mother would not betray me twice. We made a verbal agreement. I would pay the down payment. I would pay every single mortgage payment. I would pay for all the furniture and renovations. The apartment would be mine in every way that mattered. My mother's name would just be a formality until I could transfer the title. She looked me in the eyes and promised that this was my home. I believed her. The purchase went through smoothly. I moved into my dream penthouse, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had made it. I had a home that was truly mine, a space where I could breathe, where I could be proud of everything I had accomplished. For 3 years, I lived in that penthouse. I paid the mortgage every single month without fail. $7,500. I never missed a payment. I spent another $50,000 on furniture and renovations, turning the empty shell into a warm, beautiful home that reflected who I was. My family visited occasionally. My mother would walk through the rooms, admiring the view, running her fingers along the countertops. "This is so beautiful, Grace. You did a wonderful job." Brianna visited too, though her admiration was tinged with jealousy. "Must be nice to have a place like this all to yourself," she would say, her voice dripping with resentment. "Maybe you should let me move in. That second bedroom is just going to waste." I always said no. And Brianna always stormed off in a huff. As time went on, my relationship with my family became increasingly strained. I continued to refuse to give them money, and they continued to resent me for it. Phone calls became less frequent. Visits became awkward. Then, about 10 months before everything fell apart, something started to feel off. Travis began making comments that I initially dismissed. "You are being selfish, Grace. Your sister is struggling, and you are living in luxury. Family is supposed to help each other. Why are you hoarding your money?" I noticed small changes in their behavior too. They stopped asking for money directly. The phone calls that used to be filled with requests became oddly quiet. I thought maybe they had finally accepted that I would not be their ATM anymore. I was wrong. They were not accepting anything. They were planning. The thing about Brianna is that her poor decisions never seemed to have consequences, at least not for her. There was always someone else to clean up her messes, usually my parents. And when they could not afford it, they turned to me. But 8 months before I lost my home, Brianna found a new way to destroy herself. And this time, the mess was too big for my parents to handle alone. It started with her new group of friends, wealthy socialites who spent their weekends at high-end casinos in Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Brianna, always desperate to fit in with people who had more than her, started tagging along. At first, it was just for fun. A few $100s here and there, nothing serious. But gambling has a way of sinking its claws into people. And Brianna, with her inability to accept loss and her desperate need for validation, was the perfect victim. Within 6 months, she was in deep. She maxed out every credit card she could get her hands on. She borrowed from friends who stopped being her friends when she could not pay them back. She took out personal loans from banks that eventually sent her accounts to collections. And when all of those sources dried up, she went to loan sharks. $450,000. That was the total amount of debt Brianna accumulated in half a year. Most of it was owed to people who did not take kindly to late payments. People who sent men to my parents' house in Seattle with threats that made my mother cry for days. I knew none of this was happening. I was busy with work focused on a major project that required my full attention. My parents stopped calling, and I assumed they were just giving me space. I had no idea that their silence was because they were drowning in Brianna's disaster and planning how to save her at my expense. About 4 months before I returned from Japan, my mother called me. Her voice was frantic, more desperate than I had ever heard her. "Grace, we need your help. Brianna is in trouble, serious trouble. There are people threatening to hurt her if she does not pay them back. We need money. A lot of money. Please." I asked how much. $450,000. I almost dropped the phone. "Mom, I do not have that kind of money lying around. And even if I did, why should I bail Brianna out again? She needs to face the consequences of her actions. She needs professional help, not more money." My mother started crying. "They are going to kill her, Grace. Do you want your sister's death on your conscience?" I suggested going to the police. I told them that loan sharks were criminals and that law enforcement could help. "We cannot go to the police," my father interjected. He had been listening the whole time. "If we do, Brianna's name will be in the system. Her life will be ruined. She will never recover from the shame." Her life will be ruined. The shame. That was what they were worried about. Not the fact that their daughter had a gambling addiction that needed treatment. Not the fact that she had put herself and them in danger. They were worried about appearances. I told them no. I told them I would not enable Brianna anymore. I told them she needed to go to rehab to face her creditors, to deal with the consequences of her choices. I said I loved them, but I could not keep setting myself on fire to keep Brianna warm. My father's voice turned cold. Fine. If you will not help your family, then do not bother calling yourself part of this family anymore. He hung up. For 2 months, I heard nothing from them. No calls, no texts, no emails. I assumed they were angry and giving me the silent treatment. I felt guilty, but I also felt certain that I had made the right decision. I could not keep sacrificing my own well-being for someone who refused to help herself. What I did not know was that my parents had found another solution, a solution that involved my penthouse. Since the apartment was legally in my mother's name, she had full authority to sell it. There was no contract, no written agreement stating that I was the true owner, just my mother's verbal promise, which apparently meant nothing. They contacted a real estate agent. They listed the property. They found a buyer willing to pay $1,400,000 cash for a quick sale. After paying off the remaining mortgage, which was about $500,000, they would walk away with $900,000, more than enough to pay Brianna's debts and have money left over. The sale was completed in 3 weeks. I was in Japan the entire time, completely oblivious. My focus was on work on the project that had consumed my every waking moment. I had no idea that while I was sitting in meetings in Tokyo, my home was being sold out from under me. The day I returned exhausted from the long flight, all I wanted was to collapse into my own bed. Instead, I found myself standing in the hallway with changed locks and my mother's cruel voice telling me not to act surprised. I will never forget the moment my mother looked at me, with no remorse in her eyes, and said those words. We sold the apartment, Grace. We had to. Brianna's life was in danger. I stood there in the hallway, my suitcases at my feet, trying to process what I was hearing. You sold my home, I said slowly, my voice barely above a whisper. The home I paid for, the home I lived in for 3 years. My father stepped forward, his expression defensive. The apartment was in your mother's name. Legally, it was hers to sell. But I paid for it, I said, my voice rising. Every dollar, the down payment, the mortgage, the furniture, everything. I have bank statements, I have receipts. My mother shrugged. You paid us rent? That is all the bank statements show. You were living in our property and paying rent. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Rent. We had an agreement. You promised this was my home. Do you have that agreement in writing? My father asked coldly. No. Then it is your word against ours. I could not breathe. At that moment, Brianna appeared. She must have been waiting around the corner listening. She walked toward me with a smirk on her face, her arms crossed over her chest. You always thought you were better than me, she said, with your fancy degree and your big salary and your precious penthouse. Well, look at you now. You do not even have a place to live. You are just a homeless person, Grace. A homeless person who thought she was too good to help her own family. I stared at my sister. This person I had grown up with. This person I had sacrificed for again and again. And all I saw was ugliness. I cannot believe you, I said to all 3 of them. After everything I have done for this family, all the money I gave, all the times I helped. And this is how you repay me. My mother had the audacity to look offended. If you had just given us the money when we asked, none of this would have happened. You forced our hand, Grace. This is your fault. My fault. They had stolen my home. They had taken everything I had worked for, and somehow in their twisted minds it was my fault. I want my money back, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. You owe me over $600,000. My father laughed, a cold, dismissive laugh. The money is gone. We paid off Brianna's debts. There is nothing left for you. Nothing left. $600,000. 8 years of my life, gone to pay for my sister's gambling addiction. I wanted to scream, I wanted to call the police, but what could I do? Legally, my mother had every right to sell that apartment. There was no written contract proving it was mine. I had trusted my own family, and they had used that trust to rob me blind. "Leave, Grace," my mother said, her voice cold. "You do not belong here anymore. Go find somewhere else to sleep." And with that, my family turned their backs on me and walked away. I stood in that hallway for what felt like hours. The shock had not fully hit me yet. It was like being in a car accident. The impact happened so fast that your brain cannot process the pain until later. Eventually, I picked up my suitcases and walked out of the building. I had nowhere to go. I did not have close friends in San Francisco. My entire life had been consumed by work and saving money for the home that had just been stolen from me. I had never bothered to build a social network because I thought I did not need one. I walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench. It was getting dark. The San Francisco fog was rolling in, bringing with it a chill that cut through my thin jacket. I pulled out my phone and searched for hotels. I found a budget option a few miles away and booked a room for the night. Then I called a taxi and gave the driver the address. The hotel room was small and smelled faintly of mildew. The bedspread was thin and the walls were paper thin. But it had a bed, and that was all I needed. I sat on the edge of the mattress and finally let myself feel everything. The tears came slowly at first. Then they came in waves. I cried for the home I had lost, for the money I would never get back, for the family that had never truly loved me. But more than anything, I cried for the realization that I had always known deep down that they saw me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited. I cried until I had no tears left. Then I lay down on that lumpy hotel bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to figure out what to do next. I had about $50,000 left in my savings, money I had been slowly rebuilding after paying off Brianna's credit card fraud. It was enough to rent an apartment to start over, but it felt like such a pittance compared to what I had lost. I considered my options. I could try to sue my parents, but any lawyer I consulted would tell me the same thing. Without a written contract, I had no case. It would be a long, expensive legal battle that I would probably lose. I could go to the media, expose what they had done. But what good would that do? It would not give me my money back. It would just turn my family drama into public entertainment. I felt completely hopeless. For the next week, I stayed in that hotel room. I called in sick to work, unable to face the idea of sitting in meetings and pretending everything was fine. I barely ate. I barely slept. I just existed in a fog of grief and anger. Then on the 10th day, everything changed. My phone rang. An unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something told me I should. "Hello," I said, my voice hoarse from days of crying. "Good afternoon. Am I speaking with Grace Thornton?" "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Benjamin Shaw. I am an attorney representing the estate of Eleanor Thornton, your grandmother." I sat up straight. My grandmother had passed away 6 months earlier. I had not been able to attend the funeral because my parents told me she did not want me there. They said she had been upset with me for not visiting more often and had specifically requested that I not come. "I have been trying to reach you for several months," the lawyer continued. "The contact information your parents provided was incorrect. I finally managed to track down your real phone number through public records." My mind was racing. "Why were you trying to reach me?" "Because your grandmother left a will, and you, Ms. Thornton, are the primary beneficiary." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "What did you say? Your grandmother left the majority of her estate to you. We need to meet in person to discuss the details. Are you available tomorrow?" I could barely speak. "Yes. Yes, I am available." "Excellent. I will send you the address of my office. Shall we say 10 in the morning? I will be there." After I hung up, I sat in stunned silence. My grandmother had left me something in her will. Me. Not my mother. Not Brianna. Me. For the first time in 10 days, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. I barely slept that night. My mind kept spinning with questions. What had my grandmother left me? Why me and not my mother? And why had my parents lied about her not wanting me at the funeral? The next morning, I arrived at Benjamin Shaw's office 15 minutes early. It was located in a high-rise in the financial district, all polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows. I took the elevator to the 20th floor and gave my name to the receptionist. A few minutes later, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s came out to greet me. He had silver hair, kind eyes, and a firm handshake. "Ms. Thornton, thank you for coming. Please follow me." His office was large and elegant, with bookshelves lining the walls and a massive oak desk in the center. He gestured for me to sit in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. "Before we begin," he said, settling into his own chair, "I want to explain why it took me so long to find you." I nodded, listening intently. "When your grandmother passed away 6 months ago, I attempted to contact all beneficiaries immediately. Your mother provided contact information for you, but the phone number was disconnected and the email address bounced. She assured me she would pass along my messages to you personally." "She never told me anything," I said quietly. "I suspected as much. That is why I eventually hired a service to locate you independently. I apologize for the delay." Why would my mother hide this from me? Benjamin's expression was gentle but knowing. "I think the contents of the will might answer that question. But first, let me tell you something about your grandmother." He folded his hands on the desk. "Eleanor was a remarkable woman. I handled her legal affairs for over 30 years. She was sharp, observant, and deeply concerned about her family, particularly about you." "About me." "She spoke of you often. She knew about the situation in your family, the favoritism toward your sister, the way your parents treated you. She tried many times to intervene, but your mother would not listen." Tears pricked at my eyes. "I thought she was angry with me. My parents said she did not want me at her funeral." Benjamin shook his head sadly. "That is absolutely untrue. Your grandmother wanted very much to see you before she passed. She asked your mother to arrange a visit multiple times in her final months. Your mother refused, saying you were too busy with work." I felt a surge of anger so strong it made me dizzy. "She kept my grandmother from me. She let her die thinking I did not care." "Actually," Benjamin said gently, "your grandmother did not believe that for a second. She knew your mother was lying. That is part of why she structured her will the way she did." He opened a folder on his desk and pulled out a thick document. "Eleanor Thornton's estate is valued at approximately $3,200,000. This includes cash investments and one piece of real estate." My breath caught in my throat. $3 million. "The distribution is as follows," he continued. "You, Grace Thornton, are to receive 80% of the estate. That amounts to $2,560,000, plus a property in Napa Valley, valued at approximately $1,300,000. I could not speak. I could barely breathe. "Your mother, Pamela Thornton, is to receive 15%. That amounts to $480,000. And Brianna," Benjamin's expression hardened slightly, "your sister is to receive 5%, approximately $160,000. However, there is a condition. She must complete a certified rehabilitation program for gambling addiction within 1 year of the will being read. If she fails to do so, her portion will be donated to a charity of your grandmother's choosing." I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. My grandmother had known. She had known about Brianna's gambling problem. She had known everything. "There is also a letter," Benjamin said. He pulled an envelope from the folder and handed it to me. My name was written on the front, in my grandmother's shaky but familiar handwriting. I opened it with trembling fingers and began to read. The letter was not long, but every word felt like a gift. My grandmother wrote about how proud she was of me, how she had watched from afar as I worked my way through school, built my career, and achieved things that no one else in our family had accomplished. She wrote that she knew my parents had failed me, and that she had tried to make up for it in her own small ways over the years. "You are the only grandchild who earned what you have," she wrote. "The only one who understands the value of hard work and integrity. I am leaving you the majority of my estate, because I know you will use it wisely. More importantly, I know your mother and sister will try to take it from you just as they have taken so much already. This will is ironclad. Benjamin has made sure of that. They cannot touch what is yours." The last paragraph made me cry. "Do not let them make you feel guilty for receiving this inheritance. You deserve it, Grace. You have always deserved more than you were given. I am sorry I could not protect you better while I was alive." Let this be my final gift to you. Use it to build the life you deserve. And please do not waste any more of your precious time on people who do not appreciate you, even if those people are your family." I looked up from the letter, tears streaming down my face. "She really loved me," I whispered. Benjamin nodded. "More than you know. She made me promise to find you no matter how long it took. She was determined that her wishes be carried out exactly as she intended." I wiped my eyes and took a deep breath. My parents do not know the contents of the will, do they? No. I have attempted to contact them several times to schedule a formal reading, but they have been difficult to reach. I suspect they assumed they would be the primary beneficiaries and were in no hurry. I thought about what my parents had done, how they had stolen my home, how they had called me homeless, how they had taken everything from me and felt no remorse. They thought they had won. They had no idea what was coming. "Mr. Shaw," I said slowly, "I want a formal reading of the will, with my entire family present." He raised an eyebrow. "May I ask why?" "Because they stole $600,000 from me 2 weeks ago. They sold my home while I was out of the country and used the money to pay my sister's gambling debts. They told me I was homeless and that I had nothing." Benjamin's expression shifted. Understanding dawned in his eyes. "I see. I want them to hear this will read aloud. I want to see their faces when they realize what they have lost." A small smile crossed the lawyer's face. "I think that can be arranged." We scheduled the formal reading for 5 days later. Benjamin sent official letters to my parents, and Brianna informing them that their presence was required for the reading of Eleanor Thornton's last will and testament. This time, there would be no hiding. The day of the reading arrived. I dressed carefully that morning, a tailored black suit that I had bought the day before, my hair pinned up neatly, minimal makeup. I wanted to look professional, put together, the opposite of the broken homeless person they had dismissed. I arrived at Benjamin's office early as I had before. He greeted me with a reassuring nod. "Your family arrived a few minutes ago," he said. "They are waiting in the conference room." "Good." I walked into the conference room with my head held high. My parents were sitting on one side of the long table, and Brianna was next to them. They all looked up when I entered. My mother's face went pale. My father's jaw tightened. Brianna's smirk faltered. "Grace?" My mother said, her voice strained. "What are you doing here?" "I am here because I am the primary beneficiary of grandmother's will," I said calmly. "Did you not know that—" The color drained further from my mother's face. She looked at Benjamin, who had followed me into the room. "There must be some mistake," she said. "I am Eleanor's daughter. The estate should come to me." Benjamin took his seat at the head of the table. "I assure you, Mrs. Thornton, there is no mistake. Your mother's wishes were very clear." He began reading the will. I watched my family's faces as the numbers were announced. When Benjamin stated that I would receive 80%, my mother let out an audible gasp. When he mentioned the property in Napa Valley, Brianna's eyes went wide with disbelief. "This is impossible," my father sputtered. "Eleanor would never leave that much to Grace. She barely knew her." "On the contrary," Benjamin said smoothly. "Mrs. Eleanor Thornton kept detailed records of her grandchildren's accomplishments. She was particularly proud of Grace's academic and professional achievements. She made her wishes abundantly clear in multiple conversations with me over the years." My mother turned to me, her expression shifting from shock to desperation. "Grace, sweetie, this is not right. We are family. We should share this equally." I looked at her coldly. "Equally? Like how we equally shared the proceeds from selling my penthouse." The room went silent. "That is different," my father said gruffly. "We were trying to save your sister." "You stole from me," I said, my voice steady. "You sold my home without my knowledge or consent. You took $600,000 that I worked 8 years to save. And when I confronted you, you called me homeless and told me to leave." My mother started to cry. "Grace, we were desperate. The people Brianna owed money to were threatening to hurt her. We did not have a choice." "You had a choice," I said. "You could have gone to the police. You could have gotten Brianna professional help. Instead, you chose to rob your own daughter. Brianna scoffed. Oh, please, stop playing the victim. You are about to get millions of dollars. What do you have to complain about? I turned to face my sister. I have plenty to complain about, Brianna. I have spent my entire life being second to you, being used by you, being treated like I exist only to clean up your messes. And I am done. I looked at each of them in turn. I am not going to sue you for what you did. Not because I forgive you, but because I do not want to waste any more of my life on people who have never valued me. I stood up from my chair. But this is where it ends. From this moment forward, I am no longer your daughter. I am no longer your sister. Do not contact me. Do not ask me for money. Do not show up at my door. As far as I am concerned, this family is dead to me. My mother reached for my arm. Grace, please. I am sorry. I made a mistake. Give me a chance to make it right. I gently removed her hand. You had 31 years to make it right, Mom. You had 31 years to treat me like I mattered. You chose not to. That was your decision, and this is mine. I walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at Benjamin. Please ensure that the conditions of my grandmother's will are followed exactly. If Brianna does not complete her rehabilitation program, her portion goes to charity. Of course, Ms. Thornton. I walked out of that conference room without looking back. Behind me, I heard my mother sobbing. I heard my father calling my name. I heard Brianna screaming that this was not fair. But I did not stop. I had done what I came to do. I had reclaimed my power. And I had finally let go of the people who had spent my entire life trying to diminish me. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. The months that followed the will reading were a time of profound transformation. At first, I struggled with the decision I had made. Cutting off your family, even a family that has hurt you deeply, is not something you do without grief. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if I had been too harsh, wondering if I should give them another chance. But then I would remember my mother's face when she told me I was homeless. I would remember my father's cold laugh when I asked for my money back. I would remember Brianna's smirk as she called me a loser. And the doubt would fade. I moved into the house in Napa Valley that my grandmother had left me. It was beautiful. A sprawling property surrounded by vineyards with a wraparound porch and views that seemed to stretch forever. The first time I walked through the front door, I found a framed photo of my grandmother and me on the mantel. We were at a fair, and I could not have been more than 7 years old. I was holding a stick of cotton candy, and she was laughing at something I had said. I did not even remember that day. But she had kept this photo for over 2 decades. I found more traces of her love throughout the house. A drawer full of newspaper clippings about my academic achievements, my college graduation announcement carefully preserved in a folder, cards I had sent her over the years stacked neatly in a box. She had been watching over me all along, even when I thought no one cared. Settling into my new life took time. I continued working remotely for my company, though I negotiated a reduced schedule that allowed me more time for myself. With my grandmother's inheritance, I did not need to work 60-hour weeks anymore. For the first time in my adult life, I could breathe. I also started investing, real estate mostly. I purchased another penthouse in San Francisco this time, with only my name on the deed. Lesson learned. I would never again put my assets in someone else's control. I established a scholarship fund in my grandmother's name, providing financial support to first-generation college students studying computer science. It felt like the right way to honor her memory. She had believed in hard work and education. So did I. As for my social life, I slowly built connections in Napa Valley. I joined a yoga studio and a book club. I volunteered at a local animal shelter on weekends. I adopted a golden retriever named Sunny, a gift my grandmother had actually arranged before she died. She had put a deposit down at a breeder and left instructions in her papers for me to pick up the puppy when I was ready. Sunny became my constant companion, my joy, my reminder that love does not have to come with conditions and manipulation. About 6 months after the will reading, I heard through a family acquaintance what had happened to my parents and Brianna. My parents had received their $480,000, but between paying off the remaining loan shark debt and covering Brianna's ongoing expenses, the money had not lasted long. Brianna had refused to enter rehabilitation, which meant her inheritance went to charity. She had continued gambling, racking up new debts that my parents could not afford to pay. Eventually, they had to sell their house in Seattle, the home I grew up in. They moved into a small rental apartment, drastically downsizing their lifestyle. I was told they tried to contact me multiple times. My mother sent letters to my new address. My father left voicemails. Brianna even showed up at my San Francisco penthouse once, though the doorman turned her away per my instructions. I never responded to any of them. It was not about revenge. It was about self-preservation. I knew that if I opened that door even a crack, they would find a way to worm back in. They would make me feel guilty. They would ask for money. They would remind me that family is supposed to forgive. But I had learned something important in the past year. Family is not defined by blood. Family is defined by how people treat you. And my blood relatives had treated me like nothing more than a resource to be exploited. My real family now was Sunny sleeping at my feet as I watched the sunset from my grandmother's porch. My real family was the friends I had made in Napa Valley, who invited me to dinners and celebrated my birthday, and called just to check in. My real family was my grandmother's memory, her love preserved in every corner of this beautiful house. I thought about what I had learned from everything that happened. The first lesson was about trust. I had trusted my parents with my most valuable asset, and they had betrayed me. Going forward, I would be more careful about who I placed my trust in and what I trusted them with. The second lesson was about boundaries. For 31 years, I had allowed my family to take advantage of me because I thought that was what love required. I had learned that love should never require you to diminish yourself. The third lesson was about self-worth. My parents and Brianna had spent my entire life making me feel like I was less than, like I existed to serve them. My grandmother's letter had reminded me of my true value. I was not the forgotten daughter. I was the one who had earned everything I had. The fourth lesson was perhaps the most painful. Some people will never change, no matter how many chances you give them, no matter how much you sacrifice. They will continue to take until there is nothing left to take. The only way to protect yourself is to walk away. As I sat on my grandmother's porch, Sunny's warm body pressed against my legs, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Peace. I was 32 years old. I had lost my original family, but I had found myself. I had lost my first home, but I had gained something far more valuable: freedom, purpose, self-respect. My grandmother's final gift was not just money, it was permission to let go of the people who had hurt me. It was validation that I deserved better. It was a second chance at building a life on my own terms, and I was going to make the most of it. If you are watching this and you have been used by the people who were supposed to love you, I want you to know something. You are not obligated to keep giving to people who only take. Blood does not entitle anyone to your sacrifice, and walking away from toxic family is not betrayal. It is survival. Sometimes the people who share your DNA will never see your worth. But that does not mean you are worthless. It means they are blind. Find the people who can see you. Build your life around them. And never apologize for choosing yourself. I want to ask you something before you go. Have you ever had to walk away from family members who kept taking from you? How did you find the strength to say enough is enough? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories might help someone else who is going through something similar. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find this channel and hear stories that might change their perspective. And if you are not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Also, if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, please share this video with them. You never know whose life you might touch. Thank you so much for watching until the end. It means more to me than you know. I wish you clarity in your relationships, courage to set boundaries, and peace in knowing your worth. Take care of yourselves, and remember you deserve to be valued. Until next time.